Good evening, folks, and welcome to an episode of Beer Rating with Sean Connors. As you can see, the beer we got today is Czechvar. Probably not pronouncing it 100% correct, but you've seen the name, I'll give you an idea. And this is a lager, specifically a Pilsner, and as you can probably tell from the name, it's from Czechoslovakia. A section of Czechoslovakia which was once part of Bohemia. The name itself is actually, it's a combination of two words, Czechoslovakia obviously. Another word is Pivovar, P-I-V-O-V-A-R, and which is Czech for brewery, so it's Czech brewery. As a lot of lagers and pilsners in that area, they follow the purity laws, which we've talked about several times. Basically, if you even look on it, the ingredients: water, barley malt, hops, and yeast, and that's it. And they actually get their water from their own well, and they grow their own, they have their own specific strain of yeast that they use. So they're pretty serious about brewery. They've been doing it since 1895, so they've been around for a while. The area itself has, I think it's since the 1200s, but this specific brewery since, I say 1885, and they describe it as somewhat of a hoppy beer. Just let that sit for a second. As you can see, nice color, golden, typical Pilsner type. It says hoppy beer. They lager it for a minimum 90 days, and when I say lager, what I mean, once it's brewed, they actually store it, and that's where the term lager comes from, means to store. Another interesting note: this beer, the Czechvar, is the name they use when selling the beer in North America, or Canada, and a couple other countries. If you buy it in Europe, it's actually known as Budweiser, or I think the Budweiser Budvar, and that's the name of the name of this city. I'm going to bastardize the name. I just got to look it up here now. It's geez, I can't believe the actual name of the city, but it's where the name Budweiser comes from. And obviously, for about a century now, there's been a trademark dispute between Anheuser-Busch and the brewery that makes this one. And actually in Europe, and they actually lost one of the fights. So basically, if you buy Budweiser in Europe, it's actually labeled as Bud. And vice versa, this one, if you buy it in Europe, is Budweiser. So there you go. Okay, initial taste. As you can see, got a nice little bit of head. Nice aroma. Crisp and refreshing, typical for a Pilsner. You can probably hear my cat in the background meowing, he wants attention. Alright, so I want to take a few more sips of that. Just look at my notes here. The name of the city, the brewery, is Czech Buchovice. And Budweiser, I guess it's Budweiser, and it means from Budweiser or something along that line. So. Alright, so it's a refreshing beer, kind of crisp, typical Pilsner. This area of Czechoslovakia in general is known for their lagers, their Pilsners, so it's not a big surprise. One of the gentlemen is dead now. He was one of the experts on beer, Michael Jackson, not the dancer, the beer guy. He actually said, I don't want to quote him directly, but he said, if you're going to get a lager or Pilsner, Czechoslovakia is one of the places you're going to get one of the best. It's not bad. Alright, so while I'm tasting that, if you're wondering where all the noise is coming from, yeah, this is it. Lately he has a habit when I'm doing the videos, he likes to show up and disrupt it with his meowing. Anyway, with that, while I'm enjoying this beer, one thing I want to talk about is, just briefly, the origin of beer. Where did beer come from? How did it come about? Blah, blah, blah. The simple truth is, we don't know. What we do know, or the historians believe, beer has been around for about 9,000 years. And when you think about that, that's kind of amazing. A lot of people think of beer, they think of the Middle Ages, 14, 1500s. We're well beyond that. We're talking 7,000 BC. There's been evidence of beer being made. That evidence basically, they believe it came from either China or around Syria. They're not really sure, but in one area they actually found pottery chips from 7,000 years ago, or sorry, 9,000 years ago, 7,000 BC. Pottery chips, and they've done testing on those chips and found residue of a beer-like substance. So obviously beer's been around quite a while. Even in Egypt, I mean, the Egyptians, when they were building the pyramids, beer was extremely important. I mean, there's hieroglyphics of Egyptians drinking beer. The slaves apparently were paid in beer. Beer was used as a currency. Everything gathered around beer. At one point in history, even around the Middle Ages, beer was safer to drink than water. Beer, in the process, was boiled, and then hops were added, and hops were antibacterial. So it was safer to actually drink beer than it was to drink water. As well, beer had a lot of nutrients, more so than today, and beer has, throughout history, was known as, at times, as liquid bread. It was actually, people were getting their vitamins or nutrients from beer more than anything else. An interesting note is that some monks, when they would fast, but they could also, while they were fasting, they could drink beer. That's where they got a lot of their nutrients. It was that widespread use that even children were known to drink beer. It was I think they call it what they would call it a small beer. So it was a really, really weak beer, but once again, it was safer to drink than just water. Egyptian, other cultures, they have actually had gods around beer, whether it was God protecting, or a certain God protecting the beer, or whatever the case may be. In Christianity, there are several saints. That could be another discussion itself involving beer. Another interesting one, we said 7,000 BC, which is a pretty interesting time, because that's basically when man started doing agriculture. So they went from a hunter-gatherer to agriculture. And that point, going to agriculture, a lot of historians or scientists or anthropologists, whatever you say might be, that's when man became civilized. It went from being a hunter or gatherer to gathering in a place and settling down kind of thing. It's around the same time that beer came. So there's actually been theories that the history of beer is linked with the history of human civilization. And there's actually theories that when man started agriculture, they would start in areas, obviously, that were good for growing crops. And one of the crops that they would look for good soil or good environment was for hops and barley, specifically for beer. So man became civilized, could be linked to beer itself. It could be, like I said, some historians say the history of beer is the history of civilization. So there you go. There's actually a Babylonian poem. It talks about this raggedy ass man, unkept, uncivilized, blah blah blah. He spent a week with a woman, and during that week she taught him how to prepare bread and how to drink beer. And it said that after that one week he cleaned himself and became civilized. So there you go. So we know it's been around for a while, but how did it come about? How did civilized man, or even before that, uncivilized man, whatever the case might be, how did they find beer? How did they discover beer? How did they first make beer? Again, it's not really known. There's two different theories that I came across. One is that, I'll go to wine first of all. One theory about how wine came about is that hunter-gatherers basically gathered grapes and they tried to store them over a period of time, whether winter or whatever the case might be. And during that period, they got kind of more or less going bad, and in the process, wild yeast activated and they made beer. So one theory is that, that made wine. And one theory is that beer might have been the same thing. It could be in a vat or a pot of grain that got damp, and the wild yeast in the air fermented it, and the result became beer. The other theory was a loaf of bread may have fallen into a vat of soaked grain, and the yeast in the bread plus the wild yeast in the air made beer. So it was accidental. Now the beer back then is nothing like we're drinking today. I mean, there's hieroglyphics in Egypt of them drinking beer, but they're drinking it out of tubes, and the whole purpose of the tubes is it was almost like a soup. So they would drink it through tubes to keep the solids out. So there you go. That's a little bit about the history of beer. Now, this one. Actually, I'm kind of liking this. When I first tasted it, I liked it, but I wasn't quite sure. But if you like lagers or Pilsner, can't go wrong with this one. Yeah, it's really enjoyable. So my rating for this one for this week, for my Czechvar, also known in Europe as the Budweiser Budvar, I'm going to give it a nice 4.0. It's a very good beer. I would definitely have it again, and I'd definitely pick it up and have a few more. And I think you should too. Weekend's coming up, so pick up a couple or see where you go. So there you go, folks. If you enjoy the videos, please subscribe to my YouTube page and my Facebook group. And I hope if you enjoying the little chats that I have, join my testing. Please make a comment if there's something you would like me to talk about. I've been doing this now a couple of months, and the main topics that I want to discuss, I've pretty well discussed. There's always something else, but if you have a specific question or something that interests you, you'd like me to talk about, make a comment and we'll go from there. So as I said, I'm going to give this one a 4.0. Until next beer, as always, enjoy responsibly. Cheers.